much will you really net from the sale of your home? Hello, everybody. My name is Roxanne Gavari with Pamberley Realty, along with my partner, Santiago Guerin.
Hello, everyone. Let's get to know how much money you can make off your home, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because if you are selling, you want to make sure that you get lots of money for it. Otherwise, why
Exactly.
would you sell, right?
Exactly.
It
Yep.
is not easy to sell a house.
Nope. It is not.
It is not easy to sell a house. Okay. It is much, much easier to sell a car. It is much, much easier to sell stocks. It's much, much easier to sell Bitcoin and gold and silver and all that. But selling a house is a little bit more complicated,
Yep.
right?
Longer process too.
Longer process too. Absolutely. So let's talk about sales price versus net price, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is it that when you sell a house, there is lots of places that the money goes before you actually get your hands on it.
Correct.
For example, you may have a mortgage, so the mortgage needs to get paid. You may have liens, so the liens need to get paid. You may have back taxes, so back taxes need to get paid. You have realtor commissions; they need to get paid. You have escrow and title fees; they need to get paid. Depending on where you are, what state or what city, you may have transfer taxes; they need to get paid, and you may have negotiations on the request for repairs or credits. They need to get paid. You also may be staging the property, so the stager needs to get paid. So there's lots of stuff that needs to get paid before you actually get to your money.
And how can you get all these together? How can you keep them all in mind? How can you visualize these? I mean, because they're all coming at different times, right?
Yes, that is true. And you know what? We actually, when we are working with clients, we do a very good job of creating a report that gives all of that to our clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say your realtor can put this together, or you can actually have the escrow officer put that together as well, where you're having a an escrow officer put a net sheet together for you, where they basically line itemize all the costs that you have to pay, and that way you know exactly what to expect
Yeah.
once the house sells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of those things that is very helpful to actually have a net sheet, and know exactly what you're going to be paying. Um, Now, let's also talk about mortgages, right? We have a case right now where the client bought a condo a year ago, and prices since a year ago have not uh, appreciated to the point where he can actually sell
Mm-hmm.
and make money.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because right now we're in that type of a market, right? We're
Yeah.
in the type of market that the market is appreciating, but it's just not appreciating at a very fast pace,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you look at last year, the market may have appreciated by 2 to 3%, right? And some areas they actually have lost 2 to 3%. So, if you bought a house in an area where the values have gone down by 2 to 3%, and in order for you to sell, you need to have your costs are going to be around 6%, right? And you have to sell. Well, that's not going to work because you're going
Mm-hmm.
to actually owe money rather than make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the times, people don't take take that into consideration when they have to when they have to sell, that there's actually a cost of up to 6-7% to actually sell when the appreciation has only been 2 to 3%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like all those closing costs that we mentioned earlier.
So that is another point to actually consider when you want to sell. Now, there's also some costs that the sellers forget they have, right? And that also basically counts towards the cost of selling a house. Like, you have escrow and title fees. They need to get paid. If the house or the condo or a townhome is in an HOA, then you have HOA documentation fees that need to get paid. Some places have 2 HOAs. So not only you have to pay one HOA, but you also have to pay a second HOA for documentation fee to get all the documentation which lenders require. And even if you don't have a lender, even if the person is paying cash, they still want to see documentation from those HOAs. They want to see the minutes. They want to see the reserve study. They want to see how much money the HOA has. All of those things are important and are going to be in those documentations that you have to pay for to get. Property taxes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up right now. What about property taxes? And then as well as capital gains? I mean, those things, I don't know if there's ways that you can, if you're buying something else, kind of avoid some of those capital gains, or can you kind of explain it a little bit on that end?
I'm glad that you're saying this, because there's also a big confusion about capital gains, and also there's a big confusion as far as what happens when you're owner occupied versus what happens when you are when you are holding an investment property, right? So in general, if you are an investor, meaning that you don't live in the property, you have the property rented out to somebody else, you are an investor, right? And if you are selling that property that as an investment property that you do not live in, you have a couple of choices. You can sell that property, and then through a means called 1031 exchange, you basically take all of your gains out of this one property over here and move it over to this property over here. And that's the 1031 exchange. In that scenario, you're not going to pay any capital gains. You're just moving the money from one property to the other, and you're not paying any taxes on that sale, right? Yeah. But if you are living in the property and that property is owner occupied, 1031 does not apply to you. 1031 is only a benefit that applies to investors, right? So if you are an owner occupied owner, if you live in your property and you want to sell that property and move someplace else, you have to pay capital gains. Don't ask me why the investor has more advantages than the homeowner. I didn't set up the taxes, but that's how tax system is set up. Okay. And so if you are an owner occupied seller and you are single, you get a tax break up to $250,000. If you are an owner occupied seller and you are married, you get a tax break of $250,000 for each individual. So together you have a tax break of $500,000. So then any gain above that, you are paying capital gains. Now, there is a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk out there about the fact that this capital gains exemption has not been updated since 1997. Wow. And there's a lot of talk that this is no longer fair because, if you bought your house, I just was talking to another seller. He bought his house 40 years ago for $60,000.
Yeah.
And now his property is worth $600,000.
Yeah.
Right? So if he's going to sell and he's a single person, so he gets a tax exemption of $250,000, right? And then you add that $60,000 on top. So 250 plus 60. So his base is going to be $310,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if he's going to sell his house for $600,000, he has almost $300,000 of capital gains that he has to pay.
Yeah.
And that is just not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big difference,
right?
Compared to
Because he's lived in his house for 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how much percent of that capital gain is what's the percentage that you have to pay?
Between federal and state, he's gonna have to pay about 35%. So if his gain is about 300,000 times 35%, he's got to pay $100,000, $105,000 in taxes, which is again
a big chunk of money.
Yeah. It's a big chunk of money, and that's his nest egg. Why should it all go to the government? Of course, these are discussions above our head and something that the politicians would have to do something about. But at the end of the day, if that $250,000 was raised to $500,000, now he wouldn't have to pay any capital gains.
Yeah.
And if that house was tenant occupied and he paid $60,000 and sold it for $600,000 and then moved that to another property, then he wouldn't pay any taxes. So there is a little bit of a question of, is the system that we have right now, is it fair? Does it need to be updated? And I would say that the politicians need to do something about this and update the tax code. And we know that the politicians are updating tax codes all the time, but unfortunately, it seems like they're updating it to serve their needs, not necessarily the general public's needs.
Yeah. And what would you recommend someone, kind of like the example we just gave, for someone like, that is kind of trying to sell or, not have to pay that property, that capital gains tax? Would you recommend them is it possible to maybe use the value of your home to maybe buy something else? Or,
well, if your house is owner occupied, unfortunately, there is really no way to avoid that capital gains, right? If your house is an investment, you can always do a 1031. But let's say somebody says, you know what, I'm really tired of being a landlord and I don't want to deal with tenants anymore. So there are other alternatives that you can use to avoid paying capital gains in that kind of a scenario. So you can actually put your money into what is called DSTs, or Delaware Statutory Trust, which is basically you're going to go and buy essentially kind of like a small share of some other real estate investment. It's almost like you're putting your money in the stock market, but instead of buying stocks, you're buying a bit of a real estate investment.
I see.
And so you don't have to actually deal with day-to-day investments yourself, day-to-day managing of the property and cleaning up toilets and cleaning up trash. But you do get the benefit, and you don't have to pay capital gains on that.
I see.
So that's another alternative that you can do. Okay. So let's go back to what other things can affect the net, right? We talked about capital gains. We talked about taxes. We talked about HOA fees, other fees that may come up. So the market conditions also dictate a lot,
Yeah.
right? If it's a strong market, if it's a strong seller's market,
Yeah.
then you don't have to do as much concessions. If
Yeah.
it's a strong buyer's market, then you do a lot of concessions.
Yeah.
The past couple of years, we've had situations where we've had a lot of we've had low inventory,
Yeah.
which basically translates into a seller's market, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you don't have as many homes for sale. Last year was an interesting market because we did have low inventory, but we also had low buyer interest,
Yeah. Hmm. That is
and
true.
that basically caused a little bit of a correction. That's why we didn't see prices go up sharply, because the buyer appetite was not there.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, we talked about capital gains. So, um, let's talk about
What about like repairs or things that come up during the transaction?
repairs.
I mean, we kind of did we touched a little bit on them, but you know,
That is also a really good one, because a lot of the times I go on interviews with sellers, and sellers say, "I want to just sell it as is. I don't want to do any repairs." And I would say, um, you're always selling as is,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Uh, if you're selling your real estate, you never have to do anything. It's always as is,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? The
Hmm.
question is, what do you want to get?
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to get top dollar, you've got to do some concessions. You probably have to do some updating. And then once you're under contract, if the buyer finds something, you don't necessarily have to do repairs, but you do have to give some concessions,
Yeah.
because you can't have you can't have your cake and eat it too
Yeah.
scenario, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
for example, if your house looks super cute and somebody comes in and offers you full price for it, and then they do their home inspection and they find some scary stuff in there, you cannot keep on saying, "Well, I told you I'm selling as is, and so therefore that's it. I am selling as is, and you're forced to buy it." Well, the buyer is not forced to buy it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You've got to say, okay, I understand. On the surface, the house looked really, really cute, but I understand you found $30,000 worth of work. So, but I don't want to do $30,000 worth of work. So what we
Yeah.
can do is I can go ahead and reduce the price by $30,000, and now you can go ahead and buy it. And that way, the buyer is getting a fair price, and the seller gets to keep the deal together and get it to the closing table.
And then also, I mean, if you're trying to sell as is, what would you think about like having inspections done beforehand, or basically to present to the buyer before you even go under contract? But I mean, I
Mhm.
think if you were to go that route, I mean, you would be, taking on these costs for these inspections, which usually would you can have
Exactly.
the buyer pay for those already during the transaction.
So
So
it becomes in life, everything boils down to choices, 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 right?
mhm, yeah,
So you can have a choice of paying for that inspection up front, and then you can disclose to the buyer, these are everything that you may find right or wrong with the house. But if you don't pay for that inspection upfront, then you get the buyer to pay for their own inspection, and you don't have that cost ahead of time. And
yeah,
sometimes the buyers are reasonable enough that they accept your home inspection, and
yeah,
and go with that. And sometimes they still want to do their own inspection, and their inspector may find some other stuff that the original inspector did not find, and
yeah,
they may still come back and ask for X, Y, and Z.
yeah, hmm, yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
let's talk about uh, uh, why does this matter, right? And I think the reason why it all matters is because at the end of the day, you're selling the house in order to do something moving forward. So I think it almost is better if you establish the reason why you're selling. So
Okay.
the biggest question you want to answer even before you decide on selling is, what am I going to do next? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do with the money? What is my next plan? And how do I get there once I sell and collect the money?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Basically have a game plan ready.
have a game plan ready. Exactly. Have a game plan ready. And on that note, let's put this out there. Audience, if you are watching this and if you have any questions, drop net in the comments and we're happy to do a quick estimate on your home. So yes, put in the word net in the comments and we're happy to do an estimate on your home for you.
Definitely.
And on that note, Santi, it is time for those introductions. There is my phone number if you guys want to get a hold of me. There is Santi's phone number if you want to get a hold of him. If you guys are watching us on Instagram, we would love to get a follow from you. And here is our website. If you guys want to check out everything that we have on our website. And if you're on Facebook, we would also appreciate a follow on Facebook. And again, if you guys are watching us on YouTube, what do you want them to do, Santi?
Hit a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and then leave your comments. Like we said, a comment net will and make you a net sheet, give you a little breakdown, and start working
Yep.
on seeing some numbers, right?
Exactly. And remember, we sell real estate in San Diego, but we have our connections all over the country. So if you are thinking of buying or selling someplace other than San Diego, we would love to be your connection and help you achieve your dreams and your goals and and make it easier for you with the process.
Definitely, definitely. Give us a call.
There you go. All right. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.